Hey there. So, day one of my oldest child, my son, um, going to high school, happens to be at the same high school that I went to, and very excited about going there. It's a Catholic school. I've not put him through any Catholic schools, so a lot of the kids that are there have been going to school with each other since kindergarten. Usually the same school, because a lot of the Catholic schools are kindergarten all the way through um, eighth grade. And, he knows it's going to be different, it's going to be an adjustment. And, he texted me today and said that lunch was brutal. And I asked him, I said, well, what was brutal about it? I said, was it brutal socially or was it the food? And he said, socially. He said it was, by the time he got to like the table that, his group was supposed to be at, it was full. So he had to find a different table and it was just chaos. And he finally found a table and, no one was really talking to him. They all kind of knew each other. Some kid like came up and kind of nudged him and told him to make room for him. And then I guess kid started making like inappropriate jokes. So my son said it was just the longest stretch of time where he just had to sit there in silence. And he's a social, talkative kid. He had to sit there in silence and endure just sort of this loud, obnoxious behavior of a bunch of kids that, already knew each other and had their little, social cadence. It's interesting because, how are we raising our kids that not a single kid at that table noticed Miles's discomfort and sought to include him, engage with him. And I know how Miles looks when he's uncomfortable. It's pretty obvious. So how are we raising our young people, when we're not noticing that, we're not empathetic enough, we're not socially aware. He is brown, so this is a definitely more affluent, private, Catholic, white school. If they don't know that his father went there, they don't know that his family is Catholic. Or I didn't raise him Catholic, but he's been to church plenty of times. But I'll just take it back to one, I'm appreciative that he expressed how he felt. I'm glad I asked the question that got the answer. As any parent, it really hurts to think that your kids had to endure that. And I know I've had to endure that. I personally cannot. I feel like I'm just going to completely disintegrate sometimes if I'm in a social situation where I'm like in my head and I don't know how to fit in and no one really seems interested in me. The time just drags and it's so painful. So I think that if you want to look at the root of a young person losing themselves, a root of a young person going off the track or not realizing their potential, if you want to look at some of the early events that go unnoticed of a young person feeling like they have to escape that pain that Miles felt by any means necessary. Because who wants to feel that outside? Who wants to feel that not part of something or someone? Who wants to feel that pain? It feels like it could last forever. No one wants that. So what do? Well, maybe you start to behave in a way that isn't really you, but you know that that group's going to like it. So it starts with saying some things and then acting a certain way, and then you pick up potentially habits or friends or whatever that are increasingly unhealthy for you. Because you don't want to feel that pain. You don't want to feel that isolation. You don't want to hate those kids so much because they're not, because of how you feel. So it almost feels like it's, well, I could sit here in misery and hate these kids, or I could become them. Unfortunately, becoming them a lot of times isn't anywhere near who we are. And I became them. And I was one of them that others became potentially. So I share this because I think when we look at our children, we have to, make sure when they're the kid at the table that no one's talking to, they've got ways to process that in a healthy way. They need to know that others go through it. They need to know that time will pass. They need to know that it's not a reflection of who they are. And if our kids are one of the kids that are at the table that's not sensitive, is so wrapped up in fitting in and just so happy that they're one of the ones that's able to joke and talk, that they put the blinders on to the ones that are feeling uncomfortable. And I think we've all been there. This social hierarchy is a brutal, unforgiving conquest sometimes of survival and maintaining our place, that it's easy to put the blinders on and not notice the kid who's really feeling lonely and struggling. Maybe some of these kids have never felt that, so they would not even begin to understand. But I think that therein lies the root need for work with our young people, not just the ones that are feeling the pain, but the ones that aren't feeling the pain, if that makes sense. Okay, thank you.